and welcome to episode 9 of BRANCHLINE, this beginner's model railway journey. It's my first video of 2022 and you're very welcome to it. And I've not actually been idle over the Christmas and New Year period. I've been on several learning curves which involve some of these things: acrylic paint, ground cover, spray tack and lots of other things. And the layout is coming on a bit now. It's not anywhere near where I want it to be, but I've been putting ground cover down between the tracks and even making a small road and a path through what will be a small forest. And I've actually built a small hillside out of polyfiller and bubble wrap, and I'll show you that in more detail in another episode, which I've never seen done before, and I hope you'll find that interesting. So today I'm going to talk you through what I've been doing so far, and I hope you find it interesting. And please leave your comments below. Any advice is always welcome, of course. And if you can, please subscribe to the channel, as it makes all this worthwhile. And I do hope you're finding some interest in what I'm doing. The first job I tackled was to put some polyfiller or wall filler between the tracks. This was quite tricky where the tracks were narrow, and sometimes I used my fingers and sometimes I used a cut down press card, an old press card of mine, as a small spatula, if you like, to fill in the polyfiller. Well, it got very messy, so I was using a wet sponge to try and clean it off the track. And sometimes I even use my fingers, which is quite a satisfying job, although it does make quite a bit of a mess. To give the impression of a small road, I drew two lines 70 millimeters apart, which is about 17 feet or 5 meters in scale size. I gouged this out with a spatula while the polyfiller was still soft. I painted the gap with a base coat of white acrylic paint. When this was done, I used a mix of burnt umber and black to make what I hope was a dark soil earth base coat, which will be used for the static grass later. The top coat for the road was Vallejo concrete airbrush paint, although I don't actually use an airbrush at the moment, so I used it straight from the bottle. It's quite expensive because you get a tiny amount, so I might look for something more economical in the future. When the top coat was dry, I then painted on PVA glue, and this was used to cement the ground cover. In this case it's Javis scatter number 8 greystone, which was meant to simulate an asphalt road covering. You might just be able to see the special tool I used here, which is actually an old spice bottle that used to hold garam masala, and I found it quite useful for just getting the right amount of cover in the right area, although you can see that it still does overspill a bit. I bought a mini vacuum cleaner on Amazon, which I'm only going to use for picking up static grass and ground cover. And my intention is to keep these jobs separate so that I can put back the static grass or the ground cover into the jar if I use too much. I use very similar techniques in the opposite top corner of the layout, and this is intended to make a woodland scene with a path running through it. I measured the path to 20 centimeters, which in scale size is 5 feet or 1.5 meters. Then I covered that with Woodland Scenics blended turf ground cover, earth blend. After the mud ground cover was painted in, I felt that the ballast was standing out a little bit too much, so I used a sludge wash from the MIG depot areas and sludge tracks set, which I think was probably intended for tanks originally, but it seems to work quite well in toning down the ballast. I used the same wash to weather in the road, and then I painted on a very faint white line in this area. The tree is just for scale for now, to get an idea of how it might look if I built up the trees in this area. Finally, I painted the baseboard where the stations will go. This is just a mix of black and white paint to make a kind of mid-grey concrete looking tone, but I will be adding some ground cover to this soon. So I hope you found that interesting and helpful. Please join me in episode 10 when I'll look more at building the hillside from bubble wrap and using static grass. Bye for now and enjoy your modelling.